Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 episode number 97 based on novel. So let's start. You don't have a chance if you meet force with force. But what else can you do if you don't do that? The blazing delicate apricot has marked off such a tiny area, and the fight has to be carried out within this designated area. How are you going to pass this test, Hua Yuhao? Can you even pass it? Wang Chua hoped Hua Yuhao would not continue risking his life for that book. However, there was a hope from deep down in her heart that he would emerge victorious in this battle. Hua Yuhao got back to his feet in the blink of an eye, as restoring soul power with a milk bottle didn't require much time. He raised his left hand, and a heavy cannon appeared on his shoulder. This was the same stationary soul cannon that he had used before this, and he swiftly placed a high-power Class 5 stationary shell inside the barrel. It was clearly the first time that these plant-type soul beasts had seen soul tools. The blazing delicate apricot didn't know what Hua Yuhao was doing, so she continued to observe curiously. Hua Yuhao pointed the cannon towards the Fire Lady. He lowered his voice and said, "I'm ready, Senior. If I don't leave the area you have designated, it means I haven't lost. Am I right?" The blazing delicate apricot answered primly, "That's right. Everything's fine as you don't step out. Come, come." The Fire Lady dashed forward as she spoke, lunging toward Hua Yuhao with her twin flaming knives as heat poured out from her. Boom! Hua Yuhao's stationary soul cannon erupted, and a blazing red sphere of light burst out from the cannon barrel. He chose the explosive shell not because of its high temperature, but for its violent explosiveness. The blazing delicate apricot was a 100,000-year soul beast, but its territory was only so large. The force created by a Class 5 explosive high-powered shell under normal circumstances could flatten anything within 100 meters, while the shockwaves could reach from 300 to 500 meters away. The blazing delicate apricot's attitude changed drastically the moment that high-power shell was fired. The Fire Lady was thrown backwards by the explosion, and the terrifying explosive energy expanded out instantly. The blazing delicate apricot lived up to her name as a 100,000-year soul beast. Ripples began to twist and contort in the air the moment she realized something was wrong, and the frightening explosive force was refracted in all directions by the contortions in the air, and the shockwaves blasted through the sky. At the same time, the blazing delicate apricot released a scarlet-red light tea from herself that formed a dome over her territory. This light absorbed every single ounce of the high-powered shell's explosive force. Hua Yuhao had definitely guessed how the blazing delicate apricot was going to react since he dared to do this, and his aim was to buy himself enough time. The Fire Lady was blown away, and she needed some time to come back, while the blazing delicate apricot was preoccupied with containing the shell's explosive force. She was caught off guard, so she couldn't control the Fire Lady in time. This was his opportunity. 4 soul thrusters erupted behind Hua Yuhao's back. Hua Yuhao didn't choose to rush towards the Fire Lady hurtling through the air to destroy her while the blazing delicate apricot was distracted, because he knew that that was an impossible endeavor. The Fire Lady was hurtling towards the blazing sunspring, and she was practically invincible and undying over there, since she was made from the blazing sunspring's water in the first place. Therefore, the 4 soul thrusters behind Hua Yuhao began to fire downward. A frightening force instantly propelled his body into the air, and he rocketed high up into the sky. Hua Yuhao had already relied on this explosive acceleration to reach a height of 50 meters before the blazing delicate apricot recovered. His flying-type soul tool expanded behind him and brought him even higher into the sky as he flew upward. How is that possible? He only has 5 soul rings. How can he know how to fly? The blazing delicate apricot was a little dazed. She was confused as to how a 5-ringed human could fly through the air at such a high speed. "You've fallen behind," Hua Yuhao thought to himself. There was no longer an aggrieved look on his face, and a self-confident smile appeared in its place. Hua Yuhao had been probing with his attacks throughout the battle before this, and it was the same even with his domain. He knew very well that it wouldn't be easy to pass this test. He had absolute confidence to win if the battle had been a fair fight, but he was within the blazing delicate apricot's area of control, and the blazing sunspring also threatened him. How could he not know that he didn't stand a single chance at all? Therefore, he had been quietly observing this entire time, and made use of his spiritual power, having just evolved into the metaphysical realm to observe, and finally, he had found a solution. The blazing delicate apricot looked on as Hua Yuhao's body flew more than 100 meters into the air. She could control her attacks to reach that height, but this fight was supposed to be between Hua Yuhao and the Fire Lady. The blazing delicate apricot could interfere from the side, but directly lashing out against Hua Yuhao was clearly not within the test's rules. Thus, she could only continue watching as Hua Yuhao flew even higher into the sky. She had no idea what he wanted to do. "Hey, you're cheating. You've lost. You've gone outside my territory." The blazing delicate apricot shouted at Hua Yuhao in the sky. Hua Yuhao answered, "No, I haven't. How have I left your designated area? I'm flying vertically in the air, but I'm still within your territory. I haven't stepped out of it. If I don't fly out of this vertical area, then I haven't lost. Am I right, Senior? This test is still ongoing, you can't lie to me. Hua Yuhao placed another Class 5 explosive shell inside his heavy cannon as he spoke, and he trained the cannon barrel downwards. The blazing delicate apricot immediately burst out with red light, as she was still a little fearful of that fearsome explosive force. It wasn't much to her, and it definitely wasn't enough to wound her, but it could destroy the land around her. Land and soil were absolutely important to plants like them, and they were also right next to the blazing sunspring. If the soil and ground around the blazing sunspring was damaged and the hot spring water flowed out, the surrounding plants would be faced with a calamitous disaster. This wasn't something that she wanted to see. Hua Yuhao pulled the trigger right at this moment. A searing red sphere erupted once more, and barreled down towards the ground. However, the blazing delicate apricot was stunned when she realized that Hua Yuhao's wasn't firing at her. The shell arched through the air and landed in the distance. It was going straight for the extreme chill ice spring. Intense red light exploded once more as it came into contact with the white lake water. Everything was within the precise calculations of Hua Yuhao's spiritual detection. Just like before, Hua Yuhao wasn't trying to make use of the shell's intense heat, he wanted to use the bomb's explosive impact and force. The extreme chill ice spring almost instantly absorbed the explosive bomb's heat energy. However, the terrifying explosive force and impact immediately blew a tidal wave out from the extreme chill ice spring. The freezing water was blown at least 30 meters into the air. Hua Yuhao had deliberately directed his shell at an angle to create this effect, and the extreme chill ice spring's water bore down on the blazing sunspring. Right at this moment, Hua Yuhao was almost free-falling through the air as an orange-gold light emerged from his body. This sphere was like another cannon shell as it slammed accurately against the spring water that had been blown into the air. A strange scene occurred. The extreme chill ice spring's spring water that carried intense cold was bearing down on the blazing sunspring, but most of the water was suddenly frozen in the air. Hua Yuhao took this opportunity to descend to about 30 meters above the ground. Bluish-green light erupted from his body, and a tiny figure shining with orange. Gold light floated above the extreme chill ice spring not far from where he was, opened her little hands, and giggled in his direction. A miraculous scene began to unfurl. The tiny snow lady's frame was growing bigger with a speed that the naked eye could see, while the airborne extreme chill ice spring's water was vanishing at an alarming rate. More accurately put, the snow lady was absorbing the water at an alarming rate. The snow lady had released the Snow Empress projection when she unleashed the snowy dance of ultimate ice along with Hua Yuhao. However, it was different this time. The Snow Empress spirit seemed to be aging. She gradually became a little child, and then a teenage girl, before finally reverting to the Ice Sky Snow Lady's original appearance. Ice and snow covered her entire body, and was presented as the most beautiful and enchanting dress. Her large dark blue eyes were clear and deep, as if she could watch over the entire world. Long hair draped behind her back and became icy blue in color, and her hair seemed like eternal glacier. Intense cool immediately permeated the skies, and at this moment, the blazing sunspring's aura was completely suppressed by this frightening chill. Hua Yuhao was the one that had planned all this, but not even he had expected this to happen. He had determined his battle strategy after his meticulous observations before this. His goal was simple: the blazing delicate apricot and the fire lady are drawing strength from the blazing sunspring, and since this place is called the Icefire Yin-Yang Well, there is no question that other side is an ice spring, since the sunspring is on this side. The sunspring weakens me, while the ice spring will greatly amplify my abilities. Therefore, his high-power shell was aimed that way so that he could draw upon the ice spring's energy, and then he would use his snowy dance of ultimate ice again. He would give everything he had to strike down from the air and finish off the fire lady with a single strike. He had a chance to determine the outcome of this battle when the fire lady no longer had the sunspring's protection, and if he didn't let the blazing delicate apricot interfere. Who knew that this peculiar sight would happen once the tiny snow lady absorbed the extreme chill ice spring? The snow lady had grown up, and she had become the actual Ice Sky Snow Lady. The Snow Empress aura was so terrifying that even Hua Yuhao felt his heart quiver in fear, the 4 orange gold soul rings on his body sparkling with unprecedented intensity. Hua Yuhao felt the soul power in his body surging torrentially. At this moment, he felt as if he could actually rely on his soul power to fly. Flying with soul power was something that 7-ringed soul sages did, but he only had 5 rings. That meant that he temporarily possessed the strength of a soul sage. What was happening? Strange things had been happening over and over again ever since they had entered the Icefire Yin-Yang Well. The Snow Empress glanced at Hua Yuhao. Her eyes were a little complicated. Her look seemed a little intimate and friendly, but there was also a little bit of contempt and rejection. However, she only gave him a single glance before she turned towards the blazing delicate apricot beneath her. The Snow Empress snorted coldly as she descended toward the giant flower. The Snow Empress raised her hands, and the icy white water from the extreme chill ice spring erupted 100 meters into the air as it became the Snow Empress background. Howling winds billowed above the icefire yin-yang well in the next moment as snowflakes waltzed through the air. The entire area around them immediately became enveloped in a whiteness that only snow could produce. A dome of light separated the extreme chill ice spring under the Snow Empress control, and it forcibly suppressed the blazing sun spring beneath it so that the hot spring's heat was completely blocked off. The Snow Lady's expression was icy as the ice spring's aura surged into her body rapidly. Hua Yuhao was still hovering in midair, and he felt as if his body was swelling up as the Snow Lady continued to absorb the ice spring's energy. No matter how much autonomy and consciousness the Snow Empress spirit had, she still had to rely on the host that she had signed a contract with. The Snow Empress aura continued to rise, but Hua Yuhao was almost reaching his limit. Hua Yuhao's body reached the point where it might explode from the overwhelming and terrifying ultimate ice if this was allowed to continue. "I can't take it anymore, Snow Empress," Hua Yuhao shouted at the top of his lungs. If he died, the Snow Empress would no longer have a host, and she would perish as well. The Snow Empress glanced at him, but she didn't seem to hear him as she pointed at him with her right hand. The little Snow Lady's familiar dark blue ice burst out, except it was exponentially larger than before, and it ended up beneath Hua Yuhao's feet before it froze into an enormous ice pedestal in midair, supporting his body so that he wouldn't fall. That ice pedestal hovered there along with the blizzard around them. Large amounts of ice and snow were falling to the ground. The plants around the ice spring were still all right, as they liked the cold, but the plants near the sunspring no longer had the sunspring's heat. They were starting to tremble in response to the ultimate ice's extremely low temperature, and most of them began to release their own auras to resist the ice and snow descending from the sky. Hua Yuhao felt as if his own blood was freezing, and his body was swelling to the point where it began to crackle. However, there was nothing he could do as the Snow Empress continued to unleash her aura. The gap in their abilities was simply too great. The Snow Empress descended from the sky towards the blazing delicate apricot. The 100,000-year immortal herb was absolutely stunned at this moment. The blazing delicate apricot no longer had the sunspring's support, and her aura was a lot weaker than before. Furthermore, the Snow Empress was bearing down on her the sky, and the 100,000-year plant felt a little stifled. This was the true Empress chill, and it had blanketed the entire icefire yin-yang well. The toxic miasma in the air was blown high into the sky from all the cold energy, and couldn't come back down. The Snow Empress stared coldly at the blazing delicate apricot and said, "Weren't you feeling a little complacent before this?" She waved her right hand through the air as she spoke, and a dark blue blade that seemed like it was going to slice the entire world into pieces flickered before it vanished. The Fire Lady beside the blazing delicate apricot disappeared into a stream of smoke, and the entire area around the blazing delicate apricot was swiftly tainted with icy blue colors. That was just a test. It was a test which that person left behind. What are you trying to do? You can't touch me. You will be condemned and scourged by the heavens." The blazing delicate apricot's voice was starting to tremble. The Snow Empress that had appeared wasn't the real Snow Empress, but she drew upon the extreme chill ice spring's immense origin energy to temporarily possess the strength that she had when she was still alive. She had been kidnapped by humans just as she chose to be reborn as a human, and she ended up in Jing Hongchen's hands before Hua Yuhao rescued her. She experienced the polar reversal afterwards and eventually became Hua Yuhao's spirit. It wasn't hard to imagine the grievances and suffocation in her heart. The Snow Empress had once reigned supreme in the extreme north, but she eventually became a human's bound spirit. Even though she was grateful to Hua Yuhao for rescuing her, how could she reconcile this with the deep frustration in her heart punished? Ha 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 ha, scourged by the heavens. The Snow Empress' voice grew high-pitched and shrill. Even so, her voice was still as enchanting as ever. Punishment. I have been punished 6 times, and I am where I am today because I had to avoid the 7th time. You dare to speak of punishment to me? Very well. I will settle your punishment before anything else. Then, the Snow Empress gradually raised her right hand as she spoke. Her palm seemed like it weighed several tons as the torrential ice and snow in the air began to spin in a clockwise direction. It didn't take long before a colossal and incredibly frightening tornado of ice and snow formed above the icefire yin-yang well. The snowless glacier of the Snow Empress' 3 ultimate techniques. If this palm was allowed to come down, it would possess the Snow Empress' full power. The Snow Empress possessed 700,000 years of cultivation, and she was ranked number 3 amongst the 10 great savage beasts. She was also the leader of the extreme north's 3 heavenly kings. No. The delicate silk immortal exclaimed in the distance. She wasn't the only one that reacted, as more than 20 immortal herbs shone with intense light around the icefire yin-yang well. This light swiftly congregated in the air as an enormous barrier resisting the terrifying tornado of ice and snow that was about to fall from the sky. The Snow Empress grunted coldly as she raised her right hand until her palm was pointing towards the sky. It felt as if she were a ruler who was about to descend upon the world as she muttered coldly, "Do you actually think you can stop me? No, Snow Empress." Hua Yuhao's hoarse voice rang out. The Snow Empress' body quivered faintly. Even though she had recovered her memory and her powers, she was still Hua Yuhao's spirit after all. She could feel that Hua Yuhao's body was about to fall apart, so she no longer absorbed the extreme chill ice spring's origin energy. She couldn't entirely resist Hua Yuhao's will. Shut up. Have you forgotten how they've treated you? The Snow Empress asked coldly. Hua Yuhao struggled to reply. This is a paradise for plants, and the heavens have gifted the Doluor continent with the miraculous icefire yin-yang well. Furthermore, I have to find the yearning heartbroken grass for Donga to save her life. I refuse to continue living if she dies. When that happens, you will die, and even the Ice Empress won't be revived. Don't hurt them, Snow Empress. They meant no ill toward me. Hua Yuhao's other words didn't affect her much, but when he said Ice Empress, the Snow Empress' body finally quivered once more before she brought down the palm that had been raised high in the air. Her large and beautiful, but fearsome and murderous eyes were fixed upon the trembling blazing delicate apricot. Has he passed the test? Yes, he has passed the test. The blazing delicate apricot wasn't stubborn, and she could only swallow this humiliation in the face of a stronger force. She was facing the Snow Empress directly, and the Snow Empress element was a natural counter to her own. The blazing delicate apricot was almost unable to resist the intense chill any longer. The Snow Empress raised her hand and mercilessly reached into the center of the blazing delicate apricot's flower. It looked as if a beautiful lady was reaching through another lady's neckline before she violently grabbed and rubbed a few times inside. When the Snow Empress withdrew her hand, there was a red and transparent rubbery item in her hand. The rubbery object still caused the air around it to contort a little even though it was being suppressed by the Snow Empress' formidable powers. It was not difficult to imagine how frighteningly hot this object was. Please don't take everything. Leave some for me. The blazing delicate apricot pled pathetically. You can create a single drop every year with your current cultivation. You can't do anything with it even if you keep it. The Snow Empress embodied the meaning of unreasonable as she pinched with her right hand, and the red spherical rubbery object immediately froze. An icy blue shell appeared around it, completely sealing the heat inside. The Snow Empress disappeared from in front of the blazing delicate apricot in a flash. The blazing delicate apricot's dazzling fiery red radiance was greatly diminished. Perhaps that was because she was freezing from the Snow Empress aura, or perhaps she had suffered a painful loss from losing that rubbery object. Her body was still twitching and quivering, as if she were a human reeling from the heartache of losing something precious. The Snow Empress arrived before the delicate Silk Immortal in the next moment. She wasn't courteous at all as she reached out her hand and commanded, "Give it to me. What do you want?" The delicate Silk Immortal's giant flower immediately closed up and became a giant flower bud, before a tiny purple stamen protruded out and stared at the Snow Empress cautiously. The Snow Empress replied coldly, "Hua Yuhao has passed the test. Give the book to me, right now. Okay. I'll give the book to you, alright?" Yu immediately chose to submit before the Snow Empress' fearsome aura. The book that was made from some unknown material immediately flew out from her flower's heart and hovered in front of the Snow Empress. The Empress grabbed the book and grunted coldly as she said, "You're a good for nothing as well. It's too bad for you that you have something valuable. Give me the silk heart. How can I do that? It hasn't been easy to cultivate the silk heart. I can't give you that. Can I give you something else?" The Snow Empress' reply was plain. "This isn't a negotiation. I'm ordering you to do it. I can tear your body apart to retrieve it, or you can give it to me yourself. With your current cultivation, you can create another one within 10,000 years. What? What do you mean it can be done within 10,000 years? 10,000 years is a long time." "Alright," the delicate Silk Immortal retorted. The Snow Empress laughed coldly and said, "You have only been alive for a few days, and you dare to discuss time with me? I have been alive for 700,000 years, and 10,000 years is but 1/70th of my life. Is that very long to you? I'm going to count to 3. 1, 2. The Snow Empress raised her right hand as she spoke, and the ice and snow in the air seemed like it was going to condense into another tornado once more. "Don't do it." The delicate Silk Immortal was hysterical. "Don't do it. I'll give it to you, alright? However, you cannot harm my companions. Otherwise, we will fight you to the death even if it will eventually cost us our lives. You may be powerful, but there are many of us, and everyone's combined efforts, along with the icefire yin-yang well, might be enough to challenge you." The Snow Empress was clearly indifferent towards the delicate Silk Immortal's display of strength. "Give it to me. I will let this go because Hua Yuhao has asked me to. However, if anything happens to him," the delicate Silk Immortal looked like she had to bear humiliation so that she could save her own skin. Her pink petals trembled faintly as a sphere of purple light gradually rose from her stamen. The purple sphere looked extremely tender, without a trace of any brutal or violent aura. It was a purple pearl about as big as a peach, and looked like a purple water crystal. A layer of cloud-like radiance could be seen meandering within the translucent pearl, and it looked exceedingly peculiar. The delicate Silk Immortal was still unconvinced, and it was clear that she couldn't bear to part with this pearl. She probed one more time after the pearl floated out. Can you leave half of it for me? The Snow Empress didn't respond, instead directly raising her right hand into the air. Don't do it, I'll give it to you. The delicate silk immortal didn't dare to try anything else, as this concerned the lives of the multiple plants around her, and the purple pearl slowly flew before the Snow Empress. The Snow Empress grunted as she reached out and grasped the pearl before she turned around and said with a cold look on her face, "It's not easy for the lot of you to grow in a place like this. In addition to the Icefire Yin-Yang Wells Exotica, this will be all." The Snow Empress tapped on the ground with her foot, and her enchanting figure soared into the sky dramatically as she flew slowly towards Hu Yuhao. Not a single plant saw that the dark blue color in her eyes was receding rapidly as she surged through the air. She quickly arrived at the hard ice that was yet floating in midair. Hu Yuhao had gotten to his feet at this point. The Snow Empress controlled herself and didn't absorb any more energy from the extreme chill ice spring in the end, so he could forcibly control her body. However, the immense origin energy of heaven and earth was still clashing within his body and causing him unspeakable suffering. The Snow Empress said plainly, "Whether this will be good fortune or a disaster for you is up to you. The origin energy of heaven and earth belongs to the extreme chill ice ring. Even though it will temporarily cause damage to your body, it will give you a boost if you can gradually absorb it, and it will completely change your physique. Here, take these. Remember, don't bully my infant self." She passed the book, the rubbery substance obtained from the blazing delicate apricot that had been sealed in ultimate ice, and the purple sphere from the delicate silk immortal to Hu Yuhao. The Snow Empress' face suddenly blushed at this point, before she glared at Hu Yuhao and said, "And you're not my father." With that, Hu Yuhao looked on with slack eyes and jaw as the extreme chill and iciness in the air suddenly dissipated, and the Snow Empress' frame shrank rapidly until she reverted to the cute and adorable little snow lady in the blink of an eye. Where was the aura that looked down on the entire world? The little snow lady's huge eyes were pure and full of innocence. The ice and snow in the air disappeared in an instant, and the icy layer covering the blazing sunspring gradually receded, while the tough ice supporting Hu Yuhao's body was no longer there. He felt as if he were a balloon that had been blown to its largest possible size, and he could pop at any moment. No matter how strong and formidable his physical body was, the nerves and passageways throughout his body throbbed with acute pain. The little snow lady continued to help him as an icy mist condensed beneath Hu Yuhao, supporting him as he gradually descended towards the ground. Hu Yuhao grunted the moment he touched the ground and spat out an enormous mouthful of blood vapor. Strangely, the blood vapor immediately transformed into icy dust. He was standing within the blazing delicate apricot's territory, but this blood vapor actually made the scorching environment slightly cooler than before. Hu Yuhao's body swayed, and he collapsed onto the ground, a look of intense pain on his face. The Snow Empress had absorbed too much origin energy from the extreme chill ice spring, and beads of sweat trickled down his forehead and face. These beads of sweat became pearls of ice as they dropped to the ground. Hu Yuhao's mind was still incredibly clear even though his physical body was in pain. He was extremely clear about the danger that he was in. The problem wasn't with him, but with the Snow Empress. Could the Snow Empress have struck down with her palm, the one that she had threatened both the blazing delicate apricot and the delicate silk immortal with? Hu Yuhao knew very well that the first thing that would have happened if the Snow Empress had swung her palm down was that he would have exploded into a cesspool of blood that would have permeated through the entire valley. The Snow Empress had temporarily recovered her consciousness using the immense volume of energy from the extreme chill ice spring. However, she was still reliant on Hu Yuhao's existence even if she came back, as she was still Hu Yuhao's spirit. If Hu Yuhao were a transcendent Doluo, then perhaps he could have taken this opportunity to help the Snow Empress completely recover her consciousness, and he could perhaps have helped her recover part of her former strength. It was a pity that he just a soul king at this moment. There was a limit to the amount of energy that his body could sustain and accommodate, and if the Snow Empress had been stubborn enough to continue absorbing energy under such circumstances, then both she and Hu Yuhao would have perished together. The fearsome aura that the Snow Empress ferociously released was the limit that Hu Yuhao's body could take. The Snow Empress didn't have much offensive power after she drifted to the ground, and she was merely using her 700,000 years of cultivation and the terrifying aura that came with it to suppress the plants in the valley. What rendered Hu Yuhao speechless was the fact that the leader of the extreme north's 3 heavenly kings had been pushing it as she extorted the blazing delicate apricot and the delicate silk immortal. What would Hu Yuhao and the Snow Empress do if the plants teamed up and retaliated against them? Hu Yuhao could faintly feel that it wouldn't have been beyond the Snow Empress to slap down with her palm, given her arrogance and pride. During the period when she recovered her consciousness, it was apparent that their pact had become a little shaky. In the end, the Snow Empress was too powerful, and if Electrolux hadn't burned his own divine sense, this pact wouldn't have been completed in the first place. That was close. Hu Yuhao had never expected that the reason he would have a close shave with death would be the Snow Empress, and not the plants around him. The little snow lady sat on Hu Yuhao's shoulder and even leaned against his head. Her large eyes were staring at the blazing delicate apricot. The blazing delicate apricot's cabbage-like body quivered. They were all soul beasts, and it was clear that she could feel that this little person was the petrifying ice sky snow lady that had just appeared before her. Hua Yuhao spat out another pool of blood vapor before he began to feel better. The Snow Empress was his spirit, and when she absorbed the extreme chill ice spring's vast origin energy, it had already coursed through her own body, and thus it was already in its purest form. Hua Yuhao's body had also fused with the life gold before, and the strength of his veins and passageways were unmatched by even Wang Chua, while he was also highly resistant to ultimate ice at the same time. He started feeling a lot better once the ice sky snow lady disappeared, and also because the environment around him was scorching hot. He forced himself to sit down with his legs crossed. However, he couldn't cultivate even if he wanted to. There was just too much energy contained in his body, and all he could do was sit down and let his own body adjust by itself. Wang Chua quietly landed beside Hua Yuhao with a flash of golden light. She was full of awe and astonishment over what happened before this. She had no idea that Hua Yuhao possessed a secret as huge as this, and the ice sky snow lady's aura had stifled her to the point where she found it hard to breathe. Wang Chua stared at the little being perched on Hua Yuhao's shoulder, and a word surfaced in her mind: spirit. Wang Chua could see Hua Yuhao's ghastly pale face, and she placed her hands on his back to help him recover. However, she felt an exceedingly chilly force lash back at her as soon as she placed her hands on his back. She leapt backwards reflexively, and saw that her entire right hand was already covered with frost. How can there be so much soul power within his body? And it's all ultimate ice. How can his body take it? Wang Chua stared at Hua Yuhao in shock, as she used her own soul power to force away the chill in her hand so that she could melt it away. The little snow lady was also sitting cross-legged on Hua Yuhao's shoulder. A faint icy blue light radiated from her, intertwined with the orange-gold light surrounding her body. Hua Yuhao could feel that the incredibly agonizing chill in his body that was causing his body to swell was gradually flowing into the little snow lady. Hua Yuhao instantly felt a lot better with the little snow lady sharing the burden. The lazy bug that was wrapped around Hua Yuhao's finger slowly raised his head at this moment. Golden light erupted from his eyes, and he transformed into a streak of light that disappeared into Hua Yuhao's forehead in a flash. Hua Yuhao's body trembled peculiarly. A bluish-green layer of light gradually shone from his body through his clothes, clearly coming from his skeleton. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.